Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. So, today's Josh's birthday, right? And I said when Mosher comes on, I was going to do this whole thing. And then, I was acting like I didn't know it was Josh's birthday, so I wasn't saying anything all day. And then this new girl that works here comes into the kitchen, and she ruins the whole thing. Josh, happy birthday! Like, oh, you ruined it for me. Mosher was ready. He gave you the happy birthday. And then she came in and ruined it. Geoff Mosher's here. Happy birthday, Josh. Josh makes all the buttons go. He keeps us on the air. He makes us sound like we know what we're talking about. This whole show is scripted by him. Did you know that, Geoff Mosher?
I was actually told, Mike, that you would be nothing without Josh Hennig. So I can take it a step further, and I can probably confirm that from sources, that your entire career is basically fueled by Josh Hennig.
Well, I did have a previous producer, so I got to give him a little bit of credit, but Josh furthered the show is what you're saying here.
Yes, he's taken it to a level beyond anyone's imagination.
Yeah, now did you know, because Josh said to the girl, do you know how old I am? And she said, you could be anywhere from 19 to what, 39 or something to that effect.
I believe that. I believe that.
So, happy
I don't know
birthday.
If that's a good thing
happy
or a bad
birthday
thing,
to you, Josh.
Thank you.
Now, I asked him, are you doing anything tonight? Or are you waiting for the weekend? Are you like a celebrate on your birthday guy? Or are you like, hey, I got the weekend ready to go?
This kid's going to be a weekend thing. I got stuff to do tonight.
Okay.
I didn't actually realize Josh ever had free time to do anything. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the type of guy that celebrates his birthday 3 weeks after it happened.
He celebrated the birthday 3 weeks after it happened by coming here, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
He had a party inside the kitchen in the break room over here.
Yes.
Well, listen. How old are you now? 30?
38.
38. At 38, I think you have to have a weekend birthday. You can't have the birthday party on the night of your birthday anymore at 38. Unless your birthday falls on the weekend.
Well, that's different.
Right, exactly. Like my birthday this year, I think was on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it was the middle of the week.
And we went out on, I think, a Saturday night for my birthday. You both missed it. Thanks for coming. Jeff.
Sorry.
All right, Geoff Mosher. Let's get into a little football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, Eagles are at these mini camps here. Tell our listeners, how these mini camps have kind of evolved and what they're doing and what they're getting out of these events that have kind of changed, especially under Nick Sirianni.
What would be the opposite of evolved? Devolved or
regressed? There's a lot of regression.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, the amount of time spent, the amount of hours, what they are doing, it ain't like it used to be, kind of like we talk about training camp. It ain't like it used to be. Nick Sirianni made a point to even say, the rookie camp, it used to be like you come in and you get work. You get a ton of work in. And not that they're not getting work in, but Nick sort of made a point to say, I've got to spend half this camp getting them back into football shape because they've been on the wine and dine route and the top 30 visit route for the last, 50, 60 days. So you don't get as much as you get in from a time standpoint, but you get to understand the philosophy, this culture, the scheme. The rookies obviously get a chance to get out there and figure out how things are done at the professional level. And then the OTA start, veterans kind of come in, they set the tone, but it's not like it used to be. It's not, I mean, listen, are they out on the field? Are they doing their practices? Sure. But everything's a little shorter and more condensed. And I feel like it's a lot more classroom oriented now than maybe it used to be. And, it's hard to criticize when the team has success doing it that way.
Well, I was going to say too, because I'm trying to pick I know Sirianni kind of made a deal with the players, like we will do less of this stuff and yada yada. But having the two new coordinators, you wonder like what the coaching staff is doing right now. Maybe they're not doing it out on the field, but is there more importance to this time of the year while you have these new, a new staff led by two new coordinators?
Yeah, I mean, almost more important for the coordinators than the players themselves. The offense is largely unchanged. Of course, we've got a right guard battle that's got to settle itself out, but that's not going to happen in OTAs. That's got to happen when pads are on. And then, but for Brian Johnson, right? He knows the personnel, he knows his team, but now he's running practices not as a position coach, but as an offensive coordinator. So he's starting to get his first experience with calling plays. Now it's happening in practice, but his first experience was scripting how the offense is going to look in practice each day, what they're going to work on, obviously following Nick Sirianni's lead. Nick is the one who decides what's going to happen on a day in, day out basis. And then for Sean Desai, he's learning the personnel, and obviously there's a lot of new personnel who are not only unfamiliar with Sean Desai, but also getting their first sort of look at the Eagles, whether it's Terrell Edmonds or Justin Evans or some of the new defensive linemen and Nick Morrow, the linebackers. So everybody's sort of just learning each other. And that's what the OTAs, especially now, are more about, is sort of getting to understand the culture, what the expectations are, what the coaches have in mind. And this is sort of the organization's first look at how Sean Desai is running a classroom, running a meeting, running a defense, scripting it out on the practice field.
Yeah, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. That's you wrote about Sean Desai, and the headline kind of says the new Birds DC looks to make defense felt like old times. And I wonder if people take a look at that and say, wait, no, we don't want the old times. We don't want that defense. But I wonder, when you're a new coordinator, you come in, you watch your personnel, what you did well last year, and then you try to implement them into what you do. When he looks at this defense, your opinion, does he think he has better personnel than John Gannon had?
Probably not. But that's hard to say without seeing what Nakobe Dean is going to be, what Sidney Brown's going to be, I think after 5 years, we know who Terrell Edmonds is, right? I don't expect him to go out there and be 10% better than he was with the Steelers, and I don't expect him to be 10 to 15% worse than he was with the Steelers. He's a safety who gives you a specific caliber level of play. It's not Pro Bowl caliber. It's not terrible. You can win games with Terrell Edmonds as your safety. So you could probably have said the same thing about Marcus Epps, right? But I don't know that they have anything other at that position that's going to give you what C.J. Gardner-Johnson gave you. I think it would be a miracle if you got that kind of production. So obviously they're a little bit hurt there. Linebacker, I thought that, even if Nakobe Dean plays at the same level of a T.J. Edwards, can you get Nick Morrow to play as well as Kaiser White did? And not that Kaiser White played at the Pro Bowl level either, but he gave you a certain sense of stability. And both of those guys stayed very healthy. You have to have a good health at linebacker because, as we talked about last show, your depth there is looking like Davion Taylor, Ben Van Sumeren, and Sean Bradley. And then, of course, on the defensive line, you've lost a lot of sacks with Javon Hargrave. Jalen Carter might wind up being a better player. We have to go out and see if he can even play full, more than 20, 30 snaps a game, and all the question marks with Jordan Davis. So the answer to me right now is no, I don't think this defense on paper is as good as what Jonathan Gannon had. There's potential there, depending on some guys that we just don't know about.
Your point is right about Dean, though. Dean could really make this defense be better than last year or more questionable. He seems to be the guy that we don't know enough about, who has a major role penciled in, and how he fulfills that role will really kind of shape what this defense could become.
Yeah, and listen, I could be wrong on this. Obviously, it's just hypothetically and projection. I think even Nakobe Dean at his best is going to give you great tackling, sideline to sideline playmaking, some good coverage across the middle, especially in zones, closing gaps. We'll see if they use him as a blitzer. I mean, Sean Desai is not from the I blitz a whole lot camp, so I don't know how much you're going to get from sack potential, and I don't know how much interception. I don't know that you're going to get Fred Warner. I think you're going to get a really good inside linebacker who makes a lot of tackles sideline to sideline, not a downhill style guy. So I guess what I'm saying is, even if you're getting a really good version of Nakobe Dean, I don't know that you're getting something so much better than what you got from TJ Edwards. I don't know that you're getting Bobby Wagner in his heyday or Fred Warner. Those guys are almost difference makers because they're deployed differently.
Well, I'm intrigued, and I will go on the record to say this. I think Dean is going to be a difference maker. If he can stay healthy, okay. I think you're getting a guy. Now, we're in May, but I like Dean, and again, it's a very small sample size. And the one game he got a chance to get some extended snaps, his instincts were outstanding. Instincts, and made the plays. Now, can he hold up, I think is the bigger question for me, more so. This is like the quarterback. I like Bryce Young. I just think he's too small. I like Tua. I just think he's too small. I like Nakobe Dean. Is he too small? I think that's the bigger question. Now, people might not be as confident in him as I might be, but I loved what I saw from him. Minded very limited snaps.
Yeah, see, so I agree with you. I think from an instinct standpoint and having a nose for the ball, Mike, he can be a difference maker in that regard. But in the grand scheme of a game, the best linebackers in the NFL, and partly because they're deployed this way, can give you playmaking in the form of sacks and interceptions because they're out there covering tight ends or being released on the quarterbacks. If this guy is not used that way, if he's just used as the way Jonathan Gannon used Edwards and Kaiser White, which was, like once in 3 games, they'd blitz them, or they're basically there to just make sure they're good in run defense and good in zone coverage across the middle, then I don't know that Nakobe Dean can be a resounding difference maker overall. I think he can give you really steady play and make tackles and keep big gains from turning, or little gains turning into big games. But obviously CJ Gardner-Johnson was a difference maker because he flipped the field for you.
Yeah. By the way, James Bradbury spoke today. He said that what they've learned in Sean Desai's scheme so far has been, quote, pretty similar to what things were under Jonathan Gannon. So there's your first indication of the coverages for Bradbury, and the secondary seem to be very similar. Now, mind you, the Eagles were number 1 in passing yards allowed last year. They were number 2 in yards allowed, and they were number 8 in points allowed. So if the scheme is pretty similar, you would think that's good, but people might not want to hear that. But there's your first indication of Bradbury saying, hey, what we've learned so far, pretty similar to what we were doing before.
So what I'm really curious about, because that doesn't surprise me, because we're talking about 2 guys who are sort of disciples from a Vic Fangio concept, right? What I wrote about is, can Sean Desai be a little bit more of a chess master strategist in these games? Meaning, can he? One thing that was great about Jim Johnson was that everybody thinks he blitzed a lot. He really didn't blitz as much as people think. He was able to disguise and come from certain angles because he knew how to break down an opponent's protection scheme. Right? You don't always have to blitz to do that. You can show blitz, have a line slide one way, bring pressure from the other way, and it still winds up just being a 4-man rush, just not what the team expected, and then the protection broke down. Don Martindale for the Giants does that as good as anybody. He does blitz a lot, but he also gets a lot of free rushers on 4-man rushes, like he did against the Eagles a couple of times, because people have no idea where he's coming from. I would like to see Sean Desai show that he can do that, because we already know, based on his history, he's probably not going to be a 40 to 45% blitz guy. But one thing I thought about last year's defense, Mike, was that for all the sacks they got, I felt that they were more a byproduct of having great pass rushers who won in one-on-one scenarios, right? How many times do we see Hassan Reddick just clean beat a tackle with great speed or great hand usage and then sack the quarterback? That's great. But when you face the Mahomes, when you face Josh Allen, when you face the smart quarterbacks who get rid of it quickly, you got to confuse them a little more. And I would love to see Sean Desai be able to break down protection schemes, get free rushers that get guys in a quarterback's face where they're not anticipating it.
Geoff, A.J. Brown today said, we got to get off the mat. You got to get, it's time. It's time to start working. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2004. The next season was a disaster. Now, that had some off-the-field ramifications, but injuries were a big factor in a lot of the Eagles' down years. when they had a good year, you had high expectations, like this year. And then you had a year that you just came out of nowhere. You're like, what happened? A lot of those were injury related. But I guess the question I would have for you is, in your mind, is there a floor of where you think this team, like a bottoming out number?
I can't see them, winning fewer than 10 games.
That's what that's what I'm asking. Like, is this a 10-win team in the worst case scenario? Is what you're kind of saying? Now, mind you, if Jalen Hurts got hurt. You lost. That's the thing. They lost 4 offensive linemen 1 year, and the whole season goes upside down. I don't know that you have the depth to lose the amount of offensive linemen,
No, it's a great point. I don't know if you have the depth at linebacker, at safety, at
corner.
No, that's fair. And even quarterback.
Wide receiver.
Gardner Minshew gave you some. I know he went, 0-2 or 1. I forget what he was, but he won a game against the Jets. Yeah, he was 0-2, but one game he actually played fairly well. Marcus Mariota, his tape is awful last year. I mean, it was really bad, and I just don't know what you're going to get, or if just putting him in a better system where maybe it's more catered to his ability to run is going to make him a better passer of the football. He was just not good, and so if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, does Marcus Mariota come in and give you stable play? I think it's a really under-discussed storyline. But yeah, depth is an issue. And I'll tell you one thing, you look at the Bengals last year, right? They had the Super Bowl hangover. They thought they fixed their offensive line, didn't go very well. Burrow was getting sacked, and they really started off poorly. In fact, that they lost to the Steelers and then the Cowboys to start off 0-2. They were only 6-4 after 10 games, but they really started to put it together over the second half of the season. If the Eagles don't take advantage of having Sam Howell twice and Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers early in their first half, it's hard to think that they're going to snap out of it and just all of a sudden start winning all these games in a row against Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Seattle, and Dallas, right? I mean, that if they get off to a 6-6 start or a 5-5 start, they're going to have really, really put it together to be able to finish strong.
Yeah. Depth is definitely something that could be challenged here. Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. It feels like we're in the offseason, but, man, we could talk football for hours. We just start going, man, and it just starts going.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, we can just carry on the conversation at Josh's birthday party later.
If he didn't invite us. We're not invited to the birthday party. By the way, while we were having this conversation, the Phillies gave up 4 runs and Taijuan Walker got pulled in the first inning.
That guy, I know he's been up and down in his whole career, but he's usually had up and down, really good first halves, then bottoms out in the second half. It's not usually been good start, bad start, good start, bad start. It's really unfortunate.
Well, bad start. He's out of the game in the first inning, and Matt Strom is in. Phils are down 4-0, and Schwarber just struck out for the first out of the inning. But Geoff Mosher never strikes out on the Inside the Birds podcast. Check him out at InsideTheBirds.com and wherever you listen to your podcast. Geoff, talk to you, buddy.
See you, Mike.
Geoff Mosher, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.